Canada exists as we know it today because of colonization. While we work to disrupt colonial and oppression-rooted practice in the work we feel called to do at Mending the Chasm, we also acknowledge our presence as uninvited guests on Brant Tract Treaty territory known as the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, the Huron-Wendat, the Attawandaron or Neutral, and many other Indigenous communities who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the harm of colonization that resilient people of the global diaspora have experienced, including displacement, land theft, enslavement, violence, genocide, and cultural appropriation. Our aim is to work in solidarity with fellow community members to heal from the harm of colonization and to reclaim the joy, the inclusion, well-being, and liberation that is every human's birthright. Hello, I'm your host, Leena Sharma Seth. My guest today is Ali Chaudhry. He is the board president of Community Conflict Resolution Services of Halton. Ali is a community advocate, part-time professor, basketball coach, and full-time dad. He retired from the Canadian Army in 2015, and he decided that community peace building would be his specialty. Welcome, Ali.
Hi, Leena. Thanks for having me.
So great. I've been wanting to interview you for a while. Viewers, you may not know this, but I've been aware of this organization for quite a while. And given kind of the state of the world, it really felt important to me to bring Ali on for a conversation and to learn more about CCRS Halton. So Ali, let's start. I know I gave a brief introduction, but if you could tell us about yourself in your own words, that would be great.
Sure, but I think it's really important to properly recognize you, Leena, in the sense that it's not that you just knew about CCRS Halton. I would consider you one of the founding members and one of the people that brought me on and mentored me with CCRS Halton. Who I am is quite simple. I am a retired Army officer, full-time dad, and part-time enthusiast of peace building, which has now become a full-time hobby. We, as a family, advocate through charities and other organizations in Halton with the intent and the hope that we have a healthier and more peaceful Halton region.
I love that. And, you know, again, viewers will know that conflict transformation, conflict resolution is a passion of mine. And yes, you're right. I've been involved with the organization, but have been away from it in recent years. And so, again, with the moment we're living through, I was like, I have to have Ali on the show. So thank you for saying yes. And for listeners who may not know what CCRS Halton is, can you share what the organization does?
For sure. So I think it's important to start off with our mission philosophy, and that is we as a team believe that peace is a human right. We offer free mediation services throughout the Halton region because we believe that anyone who needs assistance or help with resolving conflict should be able to access mediation. We recently have started moving towards education, in particular the youth space, sports, and school. So we're excited. We've got a lot of work, we've got a lot of motivation, and a really solid, amazing group of volunteers that keeps us going forward.
Amazing, amazing. And so if I think about the first time I heard about this organization, and I want to say it's almost 15 years ago now, I remember thinking, wow, like first off, why is it still a grassroots organization? Because everybody, you know, whether it's conflict with your neighbor, you know, whether it's like, oh, my neighbor's too noisy or, you know, whatever those issues are, you know, a lot of times we suffer in silence. And so to know, you know, when I first found out, I'm like, this is so great that people in the community can access this support for free, because I think along with public speaking, conflict is what people fear most. And so to know that there is an organization like this that people can access is amazing. And so say more about, you know, what is community mediation? Because I think that is people know maybe mediation in a more, like, I'm going to say, transactional context. But, in your words, how do you define community mediation?
Well, if I can use your words, I think there's two types of mediation, in some cases even negotiation. And that is transactional mediation just simply means you look at the fairest way to divide something amongst those involved. But I think the beauty of transformative mediation is that we're not just dividing something amongst a group of people in conflict. We're actually transforming that thing, that issue, into something that each person can share in its value, especially share in its value as you build towards peace or a peaceful resolution amongst those people in conflict. So to me, that's the difference. Community mediation, I think the simplest explanation or definition of that would be any sort of conflict within a neighborhood, within a community, within a city or town. It is a level of mediation that can be applied to resolve those neighborly disputes.
I love that. And maybe again to help viewers understand like what happens. So imagine I give CCRS Halton a call and say, I'm having trouble with my neighbor. What happens after that?
So you've just called us, you're having an argument with your neighbor. You're probably exhausted at this point. It's been going on for a while. Your family's tired. And guess what? I bet you that there's an element of that also applies to your neighbor as well. So what happens is that you can call us, email us, or fill out an intake form, and one of our volunteer intake reps would call you back to do an interview. Based on that interview, we would assess the validity or our capacity to do mediation. But the most important part for any mediation is that all people involved have to voluntarily agree to that mediation. So one of our challenges is reaching out to the other side to convince them, to explain, and to be with them as well in the mediation process. Because remember, mediators, we're neutral parties. We're not advocates for one side or the other. We're advocates for peace.
I love that. One of the things that was explained to me when I first raised my hand to volunteer was that we are guardians of the process, right? So that while folks may feel nervous about being in a room with the neighbor that they're having conflict with, knowing that there's at least two co-mediators who are there and that they will ensure that there's safety, that there's guidelines that are followed, and so. Yeah, that's just something I remember holding on to, like, okay, because we say that we're neutral. I'm also a community mediator, and it's staying neutral is so important. And sometimes there is that inclination because of maybe how the storyline's going. But just coming back to our job is to make sure that we're encouraging people to speak one at a time, or just following whatever guidelines are committed to at the outset. So. Yeah. And what types of conflict, do people, I've kind of given an example, but what types of conflict do people bring to CCRS Halton in the hopes of having support?
I think the most common type of conflict that we see, that we hear about and speak to people of is anything that involves two neighbors sharing a property line. And that can be sharing the property line because one neighbor has a pool, has noisy parties over the summer. A neighbor has a fence that encroaches on the other neighbor. And what we're starting to find, and we've been finding this for the last, I would say, 2 years, is that there's more neighborly disputes being brought to us by Halton bylaw or even Halton police, where neighbors who for years have this anger, frustration built up are actually projecting it out on a shared fence, or projecting it on the neighbor's recycling boxes drifting over by wind. And so we're finding that when the initial call comes in, that's normally not the actual issue. It's a problem or symptom of a bigger issue. And that's what the beauty of mediation is that we get to help people discover what their true issue is.
Absolutely. And you talked about, you mentioned Halton Regional Police or bylaw. So talk to us about what are some of the partnerships you have in community, that are either supporting you or that you get to be kind of that first line of referral where support is needed.
Well, I'll start off by complimenting, I would say, our three strongest partnerships. First would be the town of Oakville and their bylaw enforcement department. Their director, their team has supported us for, I would say over 10 years with not only resources, but actual just support in the community. And I would also recognize the town of Milton as well, who supports us through resources such as rooms. Our relationship with the Halton Police and Halton Bylaw has been phenomenal because those officers realize that we are a resource that enables them in the community when it comes to reconciling or resolving issues. And it allows those officers to concentrate their efforts or focus on policies or legal issues, criminal issues in the community, while we as mediators can help them resolve issues, differences, disputes between two angry neighbors, or in some cases more than two angry neighbors.
Oh, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so glad that such an important organization is having that support of those community partners. So another kind of support I think about is volunteer support. What kinds of volunteer opportunities are currently available at CCRS Halton?
It's interesting you asked me that, Lena. I mean, this is something that a few of my volunteers and I were discussing last week. And I think, and the one common thing that came out of our discussions, now we have volunteers that are former students, law school students, retirees. We have a good mixture of experiences and wisdom on our team. The type of volunteer we're looking for is one that brings energy and enthusiasm to the table because we're an organization that's built to, sort of suit any sort of effort or energy you can bring. An example would be you can come to us and volunteer mediate. Great. You can also look after our social media. You can also look after finances. And so if you don't want to become a certified mediator down the road, you can still help in the journey of building a better Halton.
Love that. Love that. So viewers, if you're looking for something to get involved in, highly recommend, as Ali said, not just for mediation, but, supporting an organization, outreach, intake. I know that's a support that could be used as well. And so at Mending the Chasm, we see conflict capacity as a critical pillar. How does CCRS Halton balance supporting people for free while also encouraging communities to invest in organizations like this one that are committed to building that long-term conflict transformation capacity in a community?
I think it's a great question, especially right now when we have such an exhaustion within our communities for donating. And so what we've done is, as a group, we've recognized that our free mediation services are something that should never change. Because again, we want that conflict management capacity to be accessible to all. And we've started looking at charging a fee, a nominal fee, but a fee for our training and education services. Because the reality is this, we all have big hearts, we all want to do well by our community, but we also need some money to keep our operating costs low and to pay our operating costs as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as someone who spent a lot of time in the nonprofit space, I appreciate the challenge of, running an organization. And so if anyone out there is looking for organizations to support, I cannot recommend this one enough. Especially, I don't know any other organization in the community that offers support like this. And so it is one of a kind. It is something that's needed. So as always, my shameless plug for the organization. Um, Is there a story you can share about, without breaking confidentiality, about a mediation experience that maybe you co-mediated or supported, where you saw a shift? Because again, when I talk to people about this, they kind of don't always understand like how this is possible that in 2 hours, because that's typically I think the maximum length of a mediation, at least at one time. Is there any stories you can share about where you saw that, you witnessed that kind of those moments where like that shift or that transformation happened because CCRS Halton was providing that space and that support?
For sure. I mean, there's a number of examples, but I'll give you a very quick and distinct example that actually hits the point of people having issues, not realizing that they actually have a lot of common ground. So I mediated between two students last year who, for the first half of the semester, did not get along. And in this particular class, we work in teams. I received a number of emails, coached them both, and then finally asked them both to come see me for a mediation. And it wasn't until that mediation that the three of us, so myself and the two students, realized that they both had a common issue. And that was they both had single parents that were very sick, and they were the sole breadwinner or the sole income earner for that family as fourth year students. And so once we sat down and they were able to understand that they both have a common environment, common interests, which would be good grades, that they actually realized they were on the same team facing a common problem, which was academics, not on opposite teams. And the beauty of that story for me is that through that mediation, they both became better students. They both achieved phenomenal grades in my class. And more importantly, to this date, they remain good friends that support each other because they have a common issue.
Amazing, amazing. Again, you touch on some common themes that, like, finding that common ground in conflict. And I know that two of the principles of transformative mediation are empowerment and recognition. So empowering folks to believe that they can actually handle their conflict, is something that I know I've seen and I've heard through our conversations about the different mediations, and just recognizing I'm going to say the humanity in each other. I think that's something that I hold on to as I reflect on mediations I've been a part of too, where people kind of come in, they see each other as the extent of the problem, right? They're like, you're the problem, but somewhere, if the space, if the conditions are right, because not every mediation necessarily ends that way. But I just kind of remember that feeling of like they kind of, there's almost like a relaxing because they know their support. And through the questions that we ask, and you use the word coaching, and I do feel that's a part of the secret sauce of this is like, kind of as mediators, where can we ask a question that helps them to talk to each other? And so thank you for that example. So one other kind of thing I think about is because you mentioned some partnerships. What do you wish that more organizations, municipalities, or leaders understood about the role of community mediation, not only as a conflict de-escalation strategy, but also in preventing larger crises?
I think the one message that we've been trying to press into the community over the last year and a half, especially with our youth, is that conflict management and the ability to handle conflict is something that helps you become not only a healthier person, but it helps you develop healthier relationships. We've also been pressing against this social idea that conflict is something that you can't embrace, or conflict is something that's not healthy. So we've been encouraging people to understand that conflict is very normal. You, Leena, and I, we go through conflict every day, whether it be trying to convince our kids in the morning to wear a rain jacket, or having a discussion with our partners. We live in conflict every day. So for us, our organization, it's important for us to help people understand that you can embrace conflict, you can embrace mediation and reconciliation, and you can come out on the other end with a healthier, not only resolution, but a healthier relationship with those people that you were in conflict with. So conflict's okay. What's not okay for a lot of us is how we manage or deal with conflict.
Absolutely. I love that you named that like it's like there's a choice. We can make a different choice. That's the piece that I'm taking away from what you just shared, that if people can understand that um, maybe our families taught us that we avoid conflict, we don't talk about it, or maybe they taught us that it's explosive. There's such a spectrum of approaches, but recognizing, I think there's something so empowering when we're like, yeah, I can lean in with the right supports, the right tools, which brings me back to CCRS Halton as such a valuable partner for community members who are struggling, and to think about what's the cost of the anxiety you feel, if you're not dealing with the conflict with your neighbor, that maybe you're opening your door to see, are they on the driveway right now or not? I want to get to my car. I don't want to see them, is that, long term, that's not healthy. And so I just love that healthy conflict. Pushing those two words together is something that you are working to normalize. Um, what else do I want to share? I want to ask. Maybe I want to ask you about, like, what drew you personally into conflict? Because I know you talked a little bit, in the intro, that you retired from as an officer in the Army, and I imagine in your time in the Army, you probably were exposed to a lot of conflict, and so really, really. Interesting to see that choice once you retired to step into conflict resolution, building peace. So, what drew you to this work?
Honestly, Leena, it's a selfish reason that was the catalyst for me to sort of walk into this space. And that reason was I personally wanted to become a better peace builder, in particular, a better community peace builder. And to do so, I decided to go back to school for my second graduate degree. I decided to study mediation and negotiation. I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to teach it as well. And through that, I fell into CCRS Halton, which is an absolute passion of mine. And so my reason for being here today is simply that I want the world and I want our community of Halton to be a healthier and more peaceful community for all of us.
I love that, and it resonates with what I know about you as well. And hopefully, if there's viewers who are listening and thinking about, like, I would like to become a community mediator, how can they do that? And maybe even talk a little bit about, in your experience, like, what qualities are needed for someone to kind of excel as a community mediator?
I think the simplest way for anyone who might have a curiosity about community mediation, negotiation, or even just what CCRS Halton is all about is to give us a call or send us an email, and one of us will get back to you and we can have a discussion. I've actually, in the last year and a half, sat down with more people over coffee to just talk about who we are and what we do than anything else within the organization. And the beauty of that is we are spreading our message over coffee, which I really enjoy. And we're educating and informing more people about who we are and how we can help. If there is anyone who wants to become a mediator down the road, I would suggest the same thing. Just give us a call, send us an email. We have a roster of 6 certified mediators, and any one of us or all of us can talk to you, give you advice on what to do and what not to do.
Love that. Love that. So, viewers, you'll see we have provided some of the information below, and also we'll have some details at the end so you can connect with them on social media and all of that. I'm just thinking about also something that I read recently, just around, again, coming back to the greater context, and just the incapacity or the reduced capacity to engage meaningfully across difference, right? So kind of with that in mind, and something that I've always wanted to see for CCRS Halton is like a more deeply embedded in the structures of like, and I hear you talked, you mentioned about the sports, and maybe through, you could say more about what is that connection, and what is that support that you're offering in the support in the sports space. That would, I think, be a good model for, other parts of, whether it's the library, whether it's, municipalities, out even beyond bylaw, wherever there may be conflict. What are your, how is that working with the sports example? Maybe tell us more about that partnership, and how you see, over time, or as we continue to move forward, what would it look like to embed this more inside of organizations or in processes?
Well, I have to give I have to give credit to Jump Youth Basketball, where our children play basketball. I coach. They've embraced the idea of conflict mediation and brought us on as an official partner for conflict mediation. When you talk about embedding something like this in an organization, I think the first step is to recognize that we are going to have differences, and it's okay. It's okay to have a difference of opinion with someone else. It's how you handle that difference of opinion that you can turn into great conflict, or you can resolve it in the hopes that you come to a resolution or you have a healthier relationship outside of it. So I think the first thing is to recognize that there's always going to be a difference of opinion, no matter which organization you're with. In youth sports, it's for us to recognize that we're going to have a difference of opinion between parents and coaches, players and coaches, players and parents and coaches, and management. And so it's important for us to recognize that we have one common interest, which is that youth sport. And how do we build out from that to resolve the issue that we're dealing with?
Amazing, amazing. Well, I don't even know how this interview flew by so quickly. Viewers, please do reach out to Ali via the information we've provided. But Ali, I really wanted to thank you for taking time to be a part of this interview today.
Thank you, Leena, and thank you for doing what you do for the community. And if you want a monthly segment with CCRS Halton, let's talk.
Let's definitely talk. But just really, viewers, thanking you for your comments, your suggestions for guests. Keep them coming. And until next time, keep building bridges in community.